Hey everybody, welcome. It's Brady from BWX, and we are back for another tropical breakdown yet again. We left off on Hurricane Aaron, and now the tropics appear to be active again. And yet again, we go to the MDR, the main development region, to look for where the action is at. And without further ado, let's get started here. Currently, we are looking at what is a tropical wave. Currently, just southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands, around 30, roughly between 30 and 40 degrees west, around hovering close to 10 degrees north. Currently is where we're looking at that tropical wave, and this is the area of interest currently. It's still kind of broad. It's not necessarily fully a consolidated area of low pressure, consolidated area of low pressure in terms of a close circulation, and we're not on the brink of tropical cyclone genesis, but that could be we could be very close. So we have to keep a close eye because if we take a look at Earth Null, this is just a site that will take the analysis from that the models do from the analysis. So it'll take that and it'll give you kind of an idea of the winds, and some may not like it. I think it's a good tool. And you can see it's just still broad along the wave axis. And if you see here, if we take a picture, you can see this whole area strung out here along the intertropical convergence zone. You can see, in which is just this area of thunderstorms across the MDR that we look for development. And one thing that stands out, you can see this whole area is still kind of strung out, but you can see in here this is where you get that little curl here, and that is where I would probably be looking somewhere in there. If not, yeah, I wouldn't lean further southwest, but somewhere along in this area is where we're going to be looking potentially for development. I think over the next 48 hours, over the next 48 hours we will see development. In my opinion, I said a couple days ago, I think I said by Friday morning, I think, is when we will see development. And I will kind of I will hold firm on that until it doesn't happen. And maybe it's Friday evening, or maybe it's Saturday morning. Maybe I'm maybe I'll be hours off, but if it's okay regardless. I think the general idea is we're expecting, I've mentioned that expecting development since Sunday. I've said expecting development this week, to the middle of the later part of next week, which is now this week. So this is what we're looking at here. Again, you can see the low level water vapor, and this is where we're watching. What you can tell, I'll slide to mid-level water vapor just so we can see the steering a little bit better here, and I will take a screenshot of that, and I may have screenshotted. Here we go, and boom, now we got it. So when I'm looking at this here, what stands out is we have our high pressure here, to the north. This big old, really within this, it's this real big old high pressure, and within this, obviously, you can see the dry air present here, and there's a little bit of a small low pressure system inside of here as well, area of convection, but this whole large area of high pressure, and everything is being steered to the south, and so that's shunting the tropical wave currently right now, and it will continue to go and force, and I think it's going to have trouble. Again, this will shift and it's going to be slowly moving, so I don't want to fully say that, but right now, if I had to just look at the tea leaves, right, you don't give me any models, you don't give me anything else, I'm going to lean towards a track like this, and that happens to be pretty close to what the Euro currently has right now. If you just look at what's going on, right, you would lean at something, right, you would say maybe this is the northern edge of the fringe, right, if you were looking at it, and then you would say, maybe this is the southern end of the fringe, right? And why would that concern a little bit? Because that would put the Leeward Islands, right, Lesser Antilles, that would put these islands at risk potentially for potentially a tropical storm or a hurricane strike down the line potentially. So we're gonna have to keep a close eye on that. If again, you can see there is a lot of dry air present to the north here, even mid-level and low-level water vapor. So and there is obviously still wind shear present. If there was less, we would have seen development, a better shot for development already. But when we're looking at this area, it's going to be interesting to watch the development how this will progress. I don't have a good feel. I'm not going to lean towards significant strengthening right away. Could take a couple days. We could be looking at a weak tropical cyclone potentially for a couple days first, and before this thing maybe goes through waves of intensity where maybe it strengthens a little bit, weakens, strengthens a little bit, and then as it approaches the Leeward Islands, maybe that's when we see more significant intensification. That would obviously be concerning for them, and the size and the exact placement relative to the upper level environment will play a key factor in terms of the not only the exact track but the intensity once it approaches the Leeward Islands as well, or maybe we see it just slide to the north like we see some models. But I'm going to lean more towards the European. It tends to sample the upper level environment a little bit better, especially at 500 millibar, especially when it comes to the tropic. It doesn't always do well with intensity. I think it very much still struggles with intensity, although this is the new Euro from compared to previous years. But I do really still think it does struggle, and that's all models. Okay, it's not the highest possible resolution. It's not it's not our hurricane models, so they're always going to struggle with intensity for a little bit. But when I take a look here, you'll notice the GFS 850. You can see showing that right, that strung out area, and then eventually that consolidation. It does happen. It does happen on the northeast side. It looks like on this run, but where consolidation happens of this of this low will really play a significant factor in terms of the overall track as well. And this is why when you look at long-term guidance, you got to toss it. Past 200-300, especially past 5-6 days right now, even it's just ridiculous. It's not necessary. I put out multiple tweets saying you don't need to be so concerned about what's going on multiple weeks in advance on models. Models are tools. They are not the forecast. People are relying on models too much to do forecasts for them instead of doing the forecasting themselves. And a lot of really smart, bright-minded people as well, meteorologists included, that I'm seeing, and they're just getting too caught up in the models, or they're relying on them too much, and it's really irritating, because their models are tools. It's easier to just say the models were wrong, I guess, than to try to do the forecasting. And it's frustrating when that messaging and that wording can get confused. And you can see here GFS develops a notable tropical storm, hurricane, more waves behind it potentially to keep an eye on. And then from there, whatever, the run happens. But that's regardless. So the GFS is showing that northern end of the solution that we were talking about in terms of what's possible. And then if we look at the Euro, notice, all right, we see that tropical maybe development of a storm. By Friday morning, it seems like they're showing maybe a tropical depression, that area becoming a little bit more organized. Tomorrow, the Euro suggests, and then potentially developing into some sort of tropical storm or hurricane, whatever, approaching. Again, showing a small compact system. So again, how this exactly organized will play a factor. Smaller systems can rapidly intensify much quicker, but they're also more susceptible to the factors around it, right? So they're more volatile, the smaller systems, meaning they can become a lot more intense, but they're also going to feel the factors around them a little bit more if the environment is not good for intensification. However, if it is, they can really take off. Take Aaron, for example, when it did have a small core, and then eventually developed that large, became a large system eventually. And then you can see, whatever happens. Euros, Rome, whatever. It doesn't really matter where exactly it goes. If we play out 360 hours out, it doesn't freaking matter. We can look at all this crap all we want, but it doesn't really matter, when we're just looking at these models here, it's just too much, going this far out. It's not necessary, in my opinion. This is just, you gotta take this with a grain of salt going so far. And Euro I think is a little bit closer to where I would lean. Again, I don't want to say anything, speculate on the exact exact intensity, exact placement tracker, anything. But again, look at the tea leaves. You can use the mid-level water vapor and you can use the low-level water vapor to kind of get a feel here. And if I'm just taking a look here, what's going on, again, using even so it's a weaker system, low-level steering, again, that's really gonna steer this thing further. You can see low-level steering not really suggesting as much for this thing to drive too far north. Low level steering right now, if we look at this, suggesting further west. So when I look at both of these things, that's what I'm taking into consideration at the moment, and then eventually we'll see if that low level and the mid level steering, technically the upper levels, it's just called mid level water vapor, 500 millibars. We look at, as often referenced as the upper levels of the atmosphere. But my point is, we have to watch eventually how this plays out, because intensity could switch up, and a stronger storm could, in theory, eventually down the road be further south than a weaker storm. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Or does it slide into the Caribbean? Does it slide into the Caribbean? Or does it slide to the north? And potentially then we're looking more Bahamas way down the line, or I don't want to go too much farther, or the northern part of Hispaniola versus the southern part of Hispaniola, right? These are all different factors that we have to take into consideration here when we're looking at the potential track down the road. So in the meantime, I say Northern Caribbean. If we're looking at this area, I would say Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico should be monitoring what's going on right now. I'd say I would say put Puerto Rico into the zone of just keep an eye this week on what's going on with the tropics into this weekend, and then especially next week, you should be keeping a very close eye on what's happening. But in the meantime, Leeward Islands, I think, is the closest place to watch in terms of how this is going to play out, right? We take a look at PWAT maps, see if we got a refresh here. Maybe we don't, maybe we do. Did we? Yes, we do. Fantastic. And you can see here, along that line, we're looking here, again, very south in latitude this is, right, to start. So take a look here, screenshot, this is that area I'm watching here. Where do we see consolidation along this tour? Are we going to see this further southwest? Are we going to see this, I would lean towards this part for consolidation, but it's hard to say where exactly, along this, I would call it shrimpage almost. Where do we see this closed center of circulation develop and eventually, turn into an inner core eventually? So that's where we're going to be keeping an eye on. Okay, I wouldn't say it's 100% a guarantee for development. I think there are a few factors that I would say it's not 100%, but I would say it's very, very likely that this is going to be Gabrielle pretty soon. For me, I think there's too much in terms of solid moisture with the system still along this area, to support the eventual development of the system, even if it is slightly delayed, which is certainly possible. Wouldn't surprise me if this were to take until the weekend to develop as well. But I will lean and say that we do see development of this by Friday morning is where I'm going to continue to stick with. If not, maybe a little bit later in the day. Whatever. It's just we have to monitor, though, where exactly does that happen, because that could have huge implications on track in the short term and the long term. Noticed I have not yet to mention the U.S. and any impacts. You know why? Because any impacts, in theory, would be multiple weeks out potentially, or 10 to 15 plus days out. And that does not concern me when we're looking at potential model runs. Why? Because the stuff is yet to resolve itself. Let me, I don't know why it zoomed out here. There we go. Stuff is yet to resolve. Take a look here, looking at the Pacific, right? This is eventually what we'll be looking at, 7 to 14 days from now, in terms of the upper level environment. Look how much traffic needs to organize itself out, right? You can see Hurricane Kiko, which is out there in approaching Hawaii soon. Eventually, we'll see how close that gets. Category 4 hurricane. It looks like it's having a little bit of problems this evening, but it still is a 145-mile-per-hour hurricane according to the last advisory. Maybe slightly weaker now. It doesn't look all that great at the moment, but and then you can see we also have hurricane, I believe, Lorenza, if I believe in the Pacific as well. Lorena in the Pacific as well. Right, so you can see there's a couple different things, but this is what we're watching down the line. There's a lot of different factors, that we have to watch, and so I would be keeping a close eye, on what's going on out here in the Pacific, because I think this will eventually play a part in what sets up for the steering currents. Remember, the upper levels are what work as the steering currents for these tropical systems, especially the stronger they get, the more the influence they're going to feel from the upper levels in terms of where the track happens. So until that gets figured out, there's no reason that, to suggest that, South Carolina's at risk or New England's at risk, right? There's no reason to suggest that yet when we're nowhere near that. So I think this is the information that you only need at this point, and this is what I'm going to stick with. So maybe we do a video tomorrow, maybe not. We'll see. If we get development, maybe we do so, because I like to keep you all updated the best I can, and provide the information. I think that's what's necessary and what you should be keeping a close eye on. This I just talking about what I'm keeping a close eye on. And I think what I think are going to be important factors. Doesn't mean I'm always perfect or the best, but I'm just doing what I think is hopefully a decent job. That's what I try to do. I try to find out. I don't just decent job. I just try to find out what the end result is, and hopefully it ends up being a decent job. I put a lot of great trust in that. I'm going to be doing things, working hard to figure out what the pieces are. And, when you have that curiosity to figure out what the end result is going to be, you try not to let anything get in your way of figuring out what is going to happen. So, that curiosity oftentimes takes over. Obviously, I don't get paid to do any of this, at least not yet. Hopefully soon, on YouTube or X, or either way. But yeah, that curiosity takes over, and my goal is just to figure out what's going to happen. That's why I love this so much. It's a mystery, and I get the chance to solve it. But yes, so that's what's going on here with the Tropics future, Gabrielle, which we'll be watching, and I'm sure could eventually be the talk of the weather, in terms of early September into mid-September. We could be looking at this for a while, and that doesn't mean, remember, peak hurricane season, sometimes little things can pop up, so you have to keep a close eye, especially as the MJO moves into a more favorable phase. So keep a close eye on things always. Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, we have to keep close eye on certain things, just off the southeast U.S., certain things can pop. So again, just a reminder, we're going into peak hurricane season. Sometimes things that weren't on guidance until the very last second can pop and certainly make a name for themselves. I think Sally was one a little while ago that sticks out as, one that just popped, and all of a sudden, you had a major hurricane make landfall. I could be wrong, but I think Sally was just, that was a crazy hurricane season as well. But hopefully this provides some perspective. I appreciate you all tuning in, and until next time, peace.